In three, two, one. Hello, and welcome to Know the Score. I'm your host, Don Delarente, and I'm joined by the Libra icon, Dwayne. What's going on, Dwayne?
Hey, not much. Another week, but this is probably the best time of the year. NBA, NHL playoffs. Let's go.
All right, just a reminder that this is Know the Score. Know the Score is being brought to you by CSPN. You can find us on the website at www.cspn.com. You can also find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, and I'm missing one. Google, SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher. I think I got them all. And any other platforms that you can listen to, podcasts, download, all that type of good stuff. So please download, rate, review, subscribe, share, retweet, all that good stuff. Let everybody know about us here at Know the Score. So, Dwayne, we had some NFL news. Those Patriots, they're up to their evil ways again. It's getting close to the draft, and they shocked everybody by trading wide receiver Brandon Cooks to the Rams. And then they acquired Jordan Matthews from the Bills. So let's look at this first from the Rams' perspective, as they've been the most active team in the NFC, trying to really set themselves up for a Super Bowl or bust season. I think I was about to say NFC Championship game, but with all the moves they've made, I think they're going to be, on a lot of people's list, for the Super Bowl. So, what does Brandon Cooks bring to the Rams that they didn't have last year to their passing attack?
Yeah, so they have a lot of speed now on the outside. I think Brandon Cooks is a faster receiver than Sammy Watkins, and he's a shifty receiver. That's somebody that Jared Goff can get down the field pretty fast and can also make a lot of um, openings for other playmakers on the team, like Cooper Cup and Todd Gurley out the backfield. So this is not only a dynamic where they can make moves for the Super Bowl. They want to open up that new stadium in Inglewood the next season with the championship celebration. So they're not only looking for the Super Bowl for this year, but they're looking for opening that brand new facility in Inglewood with the Thursday night Super Bowl block party celebration that LA hasn't seen in quite some time.
Yeah, as we talked about last week, hopefully for Sean McVay's sake, injuries, don't hamper the team and he can get them at their full capacity and they have some good chemistry as far as all the new additions mixing in with the players that they have returning. But this is really set up for him, like we said, to just hold on to the steering wheel and just keep the car out of the ditch, man, and just hold it in the lane because he's going to have all the toys in the world he could ever want on offense. He's got, a veteran defensive coordinator, and they went out and got him some veteran guys that he can work with that fit his system. Now, this draft is just going to be, probably just filling holes and acquiring depth. So, if the Rams really do their work in the draft, they could really be set up, like you said, not only for this year, but for the next 3 or 4 years, because that stadium is going to generate so much money if they're a good football team coming in there off the break. And Wes Snead has done a fantastic job of setting them up to have that look. Now if it all plays out on the field as it does on paper, then we could be looking at a juggernaut. But you saying that they want to have that Super Bowl celebration to kick off their stadium, definitely makes sense with how aggressive they've been this offseason. We'll get in. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and also and I think also with that it kind of alludes to Stan Kroenke and how he's really been um, very, very stingy the first couple of years, but now with the stadium opening and you're not going to get that much money from the Chargers and the stadium share, going all in with the spending spree, trying to get this crowd in LA excited for this possible Super Bowl run. So
All right. Now let's talk about this trade from the Patriots' perspective. They acquired Jordan Matthews. They also, get some more draft picks as well. So, I mean, they've got just a stockpile of picks in the first, second, and third round. So, are the Patriots thinking about a master plan? And that master plan is acquiring Odell Beckham if he's really, truly out there available for trade?
it's a good question. It's a high possibility. I mean, you look at it as the situation with the Giants that hasn't gone very well, and Bill Belichick and the Crafts, they're no strangers to making deals with Dave Gettleman. Dave Gettleman will find a deal that's best for him, and so with stockpiling the picks, you have the two first round picks, which is what the Giants would be looking for, and you have Odell Beckham, who's not really all that happy right now with the Giants management. I'm sure he wants to stay in New York, but he would love to have a long term deal. And with the stubbornness of Gettleman and the demands that the Giants do want, and the Patriots stockpiling these picks, this could be part of that master plan. And I also think even if they don't go through with said master plan, they'll get enough talent that will fill in the system gaps that every other team does not have. So, with the way the Patriot system is run, you can just put anybody anywhere and they'll flourish.
All right. And what about the Bills? They made the playoffs for the first time in a long time, but now, they're revamping their team. They shipped Tyrod Taylor off to Cleveland. So kind of, assess what they're kind of doing as they're, another one of these teams that are trying to rebuild but be competitive at the same time.
I like to call them Carolina North in a sense because they have a lot of Panther influences there. Sean McDermott, Brandon Bean, Kelvin Benjamin, a few other players that have been plucked from the Panthers. So they're trying to build that Carolina North culture, but it's going to be hard right now. Your top quarterback currently at the moment is Nathan Peterman, who did not have a really good debut in earlier this season. So it's going to be just interesting to see from their perspective if they can get to the promised land again. I think ending that long playoff drought, being the last team to clinch a playoff spot in the century, is something to be as a good accomplishment. But they're looking for more, and right now, with the way the current roster is, I mean, AJ McCarron will probably likely be the starter since they did acquire him from the Bengals. They do have Chris Ivory, LaShawn McCoy, and if Kelvin Benjamin can be a factor, they might have something there. But it's gonna be one of those things with the Dolphins trying to improve as well as the Jets. Still a long way to go. The Buffalo has a chance, but other teams are improving in the AFC. It's gonna be a while before we see if they can be successful once again.
All right. We're going to shift over to golf. As for 2 weeks, I was touting the Masters coming up. Looking forward to watching Tiger Woods. Sunday was his best day. Unfortunately, Friday was his worst day, and those 2 days did not even out themselves. So Tiger finished at +1. He finished 32nd on the leaderboard. He made the cut within one shot on Friday as things kind of went sideways for him. He finished the opening round at 1 over, which isn't bad. He usually that's about what he shoots, normally at the Masters. But that second day, that third day, he usually turns it up, turns it on, and kind of gets a good lead. And then Sunday he would usually coast home, but Friday he really kind of blew up a little bit. Saturday he was even par, and then Sunday he went low. He went 4 under to finish at +1. So good for Tiger there. Patrick Reed actually won the Masters. He went one at 15 under. Ricky Fowler, he outdueled Ricky Fowler, came in at 14 under. Sundays at the Masters are really fun, especially when guys start making a charge. They may be 4 or 5 shots back, and the pressure gets to the leader, and that guy who's making a charge is, feels that leader feeling the pressure, and he starts coming on. That's kind of what we had. But Patrick Reed made enough shots coming down the stretch, and Ricky Fowler comes up short one more time. And on Friday, we had the, everybody who's played golf, that's an amateur, saw a professional have one of their moments as Sergio Garcia hit 5 straight shots into the water on the 15th hole on the first day. He shot the biggest number ever at the Masters. I think it was like a -13 or something on the hole. The largest score ever for that hole at the Masters. So, yeah, Sergio Garcia had quite the amateur moment there on Thursday at the Masters. So just a little update on the Masters. This is Know the Score. I'm your host, Don Delarente. I'm here with my co-host, the Libra icon, Dwayne, and you are listening to us through the CSPN network. You can find us at www.cspn.us. All right, Dwayne, we've got 16 teams, well, really 17 teams that are playoff contention worthy for the NBA right now. We would like to sit here and tell you we have these matchups all figured out, but there's still a couple of games left in the regular season, so there's going to be some fluctuations here and there of who's playing who and who's going to be playing where and what seed. So what we're going to do, though, is we're going to talk about a little bit about each of the 16 teams, or in this case, like I said, 17 teams, because we can't count out the Denver Nuggets in the West, as they could be a team that sneaks into the playoffs. So we're going to get this thing started off with the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, the Toronto Raptors. Now, Dwayne, has been stated on this show many times by you that they are the team that must prove it to you the most. Their track record in the playoffs hasn't been that good when it comes to having a really good team and performing up to the expectations in said playoffs. So, Dwayne, what makes you think that this year's Toronto Raptors will end up being more of the same, and possibly, if the matchup becomes, the wrong one for Toronto, end up on the wrong side of a 1-8 matchup?
That's a good question. So I think it boils down to who will be the A seed. If it's an A seed like the Wizards or Miami or even Milwaukee. I don't think Milwaukee will drop that far, but there's a possibility it was Washington and Miami. And the way each team can play between Washington and Miami, they have the ability to steal one in Toronto. And Toronto does have the home court in the East. They got the number 1 seed. They've had a great regular season, but a lot of times, it's been documented by a lot of the people how Kyle Lowry seems to fade away sometimes in the postseason when the lights are on bright, and so if they get a 1-8 matchup that's not favorable because poor shooting, lack of composure, things like that, it could be a disaster for Jurassic Park, and it could be a disaster for the Raptors. And they're a vulnerable 1 seed. I think a lot of teams in the East, if they don't get out the first round, they may not even see the second round because They may get a matchup that features Cleveland, Indiana, or Philadelphia. All three of them are very, very good and can easily match up. And of course, Cleveland has LeBron James. And so my thing is with the Raptors, are they do they have enough pieces? Do they have enough guys who have enough experience to come through when the lights are bright? And history has said no. We may see something differently, but I think if they get the Wizards, we might see a 8-1 Washington over Toronto. You may see it, maybe even see it with Miami because they do have, for some reason, the ageless wonder Dwayne Wade on their team and a lot of complimentary young guys as well.
Right. Yeah. Toronto's definitely the team with the most to prove in the first round. They got to definitely get out of it because a lot of people, like you say, just think they're vulnerable. I don't think personally they have enough 3-point shooting, consistent 3-point shooting. They're a good offensive rebounding team. So that makes up for, and not being able to make a lot of threes. They can go get them when they miss them. They get out in transition pretty well. So they can get a lot of, easy buckets that way. But these are the playoffs, and we know that things, tend to slow down. And DeRozan and Lowry, though they are pretty good players, they don't get those, fourth quarter calls that you see some other players get with reputations in the league. So that also is a big factor when it comes to playoff time, when the games get close and the games get tight. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think they're very vulnerable. So, anything could happen. Like you said, if they get the wrong matchup, I think the Wizards – John Wall is rounding himself back into playing form. He missed the last 2 months of the season. So if they can kind of get him back in the fold and they can kind of work out their team issues, that could be a deadly matchup for Toronto in this sense because, they know each other very well. And they've all, played in the playoffs in the past couple of years. So there won't be any secrets or any tricks between the two teams. So that'll be something to definitely look out for who is in the bottom of the Eastern Conference. We'll move on to your beloved Boston Celtics, Dwayne, as they suffered the bad news this week, or last week rather, that Kyrie Irving will need another surgery on his knee, and that will basically make him ineligible for the rest of the season and the playoffs. Boston's dealt with injury all season from the first game with Gordon Hayward going down. They had their, top lineup for all of about 2 minutes all season. And now they're going to, lose their prize free agent going into the playoffs. So let's talk about the Boston Celtics. Brad Stevens, considered to be, the best, maybe pure X and O coach in the league. What is he going to have to do? What does he have in his bag of tricks to get Boston through this Eastern Conference this season without his two big guns?
Since he doesn't have two of his big guns, he's going to really rely on Al Horford, Marcus Morris, Terry Rozier, who has really become a big player since Kyrie has been hurt. You also have to look at the young guns too, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, two guys who are supposed to have been not even being able to coexist, but have gelled really well together. Uh, both were the number 3 picks last year and this year, respectively, and both have played very well. So the Celtics have also added players off the bench. Greg Monroe, he recently had a triple double, and even guys from the D League as well. I mean, they've got some nice call outs from Maine and Shane Larkin, Jabari Bird, Jonathan Gibson, who signed recently from China. So these guys are really able to work with Brad Stevens. They are playing surprisingly well, much better than many of us have anticipated. But with the playoffs now a whole different monster, It's going to be interesting to see how well the Celtics can continue to keep this up. But without the dynamics of Kyrie, and of course, you never had Gordon Hayward longer than a few minutes. It's been a big setback. I think a lot of people thought Boston would be the team to come out the East this year had it not been for all these injuries. But you never know what can happen as long as Brent Stevens is coaching. But it's going to be a tough road for Boston. I think they get out the first round, but they are out the second.
All right. Next, we'll go to the hottest team in the NBA at the time that we're recording this, the Philadelphia 76ers. Ben Simmons is putting up a triple-double during their long winning streak. They had an epic last Friday night against the Cavaliers where they had the Cavaliers down by 30. King James put the Cavs on his back, almost got them a win, but came up just short. LeBron had a 44-point triple-double. Ben Simmons also did work. He had like a 27-point triple-double. So let's talk about the 76ers. They're young. They're athletic. They're probably not supposed to be this good this soon. And a lot of people are looking at them as the team to possibly come out of the Eastern Conference because, this is not a typical year in the East. LeBron hasn't had his dominant as far as, his team wise year, being able to lift them up after the All-Star break to get them, to where they need to be. So talk about the 76ers. People are getting behind the process fully now. They understand, it took them a while to finally get to this point, but now they're here. They're the hottest team going into the playoffs. And just what do you see for them, getting into the playoffs and navigating, the waters that is the Eastern Conference?
I like the 76ers a lot. And not only Ben Simmons is no doubt the rookie of the year, Brett Brown is the coach of the year, I think, as well. And and I said this earlier today, you got to give the Sixers ownership, and you even got to give the Colangelos a lot of credit. They could have fired Brett Brown in 2016 when this team went 10-72 a couple years ago, but they decided to stick with it, stick with the process that's already been instituted, and it has paid huge dividends for this team, and they're peaking at the right time. And so now you have a team that can really do some damage in the East as a possible third seed. If they win out, that'll be 16 straight wins and a 3 seed in the East. So not only do they avoid LeBron and company until the possible Eastern Conference Finals, and they do have a chance to get to the NBA Finals. They have a great shot as much as anybody. My only concern is with them is the youth of this team. I mean, they're still a young team. They do have a lot of veteran presence now, more veteran presence than they do have. Brett Brown does have playoff experience. He's been to the playoffs as an assistant with the Spurs. He's won 4 championships with the Spurs. So there's that going for him. But considering how Philadelphia's been the championship location with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl and Villanova winning the national title, why not the Sixers? Why not?
Yeah, there's a lot of momentum. So the bandwagon is starting to, get some people on it. So you never know, man. If things work right, injuries, Embiid comes back, he's getting this break, from the orbital fracture. He'll be fresh going into the playoffs. He'll have his legs underneath him, hopefully, and kind of rejuvenated going into the playoff run. Big things could be on the horizon for the 76ers. Next, that brings us to the presumed number 4 seed as the Cleveland Cavaliers are headed into the playoffs with LeBron putting up, outstanding numbers. Now, see, this is what I don't like. Everybody's like, oh, he's doing this in his 15th year. Technically, this is true. But for a man who started playing in the NBA when he's 18, he's 33. That's about Michael Jordan's prime. Nobody was saying that when Michael Jordan was 33 and he was putting up, his MVP numbers. They were just like, oh, yeah, he's in his prime. He's in his 8th year. This is about what he should be doing. So, that kind of irks me when people say that. The number of years is, not that relevant to me when you start playing in the NBA at 18. Michael Jordan at this point had only been a pro for 8 years. But anyway, get back into the Cleveland Cavaliers. A team that's been injured big time. They had a whole remake right before the trade deadline. They got some guys IT out and a bunch of other guys out, added some young, fresh legs in. Then, of course, they get some more injuries right after that. So they really haven't had a chance to, be fully operational with their new parts and pieces. Looks like in the playoffs that will be the case, that they will be able to come in whole. Can LeBron, this will be the hardest run he's had to make in a while from the 4th seed. Is it going to be too much to try to carry this particular team through these Eastern Conference playoffs?
Before the Kyrie injury, I would have said this would be a tough run. And even with the Sixers on their winning streak, it still will be a tough run because I see a 4 and a 3 in the Eastern Conference Finals, Cleveland and Philadelphia. And we saw what Cleveland did when this unit first started playing together. They were they played like they were playing for years. And so, before the injuries happened, it was looking like Cleveland could make a whole bunch of noise once again. And with everybody coming back at the perfect time, this could be something that is needed. Now, LeBron's never been out the first round. I easily see that happening, that they move on. And then we can say that with the Toronto Raptors there, we know what LeBron has done to them in the past. History repeats itself there. Now, this would be tough because if we went based off the game they recently played, which is pretty close to the postseason, could the Sixers, who would have home court, all Cleveland would need to do is take one in Philadelphia, maybe two. I think it can be done. I think Cleveland does have a better path. I won't say an easier path, but they have a better path to the finals because Kyrie's out. The Sixers are young. The Raptors have improved themselves. And who knows, they may not even get out the first round depending on who they play. So it's going to be a very interesting postseason in the Eastern Conference because it could be paved for LeBron to return to the finals, which would be good for the NBA ratings wise, but it could be a roadblock in the form of the 76ers if they could get over that youth factor.
All right. Next up, the 5th seed may be the Indiana Pacers. Now, this is a team that's been surprising from, the beginning of the season. They went on a nice little winning streak, and they've kind of maintained, and, they've been right there with Cleveland all season in that division as well. So what do you see, for the Pacers? A young team that a lot of people don't know anything about. But, they're a good team. They play up tempo. They put up a lot of points. They like to play exciting basketball, get up and down, shoot a lot of threes. So just talk about Indiana and, could they be, a young team that nobody's really seen a lot of that could shock and, go on a nice little run in this playoffs?
Now, with the Pacers, you got a Coach of the Year candidate, Nate McMillan. And Nobody's talked about that. Nate McMillan has done one heck of a job as a coach of the Pacers. Right now, they are in the fifth seed. They have the most improved player in the NBA, Victor Oladipo. They have a big man in Miles Turner. Uh, Lance Stevenson is back in a comfort zone because Indiana's his comfort zone. We saw what happened when he left Indiana. He didn't have a good time in Charlotte. He didn't have a not so hot time in LA with the Clippers. He goes back to Indiana and he is doing what made him a key player with the Pacers here. Now, now with the one game left, oh yeah, how can you forget Demontis Sabonis? I mean, this kid is at one point he had a double double with the against the Hornets, and he's a double double machine. He can get anywhere from 12 and 10 on a nightly basis if possible, and so it's going to be a very very good season for the Pacers. Well, it's good postseason. I think they can compete with Cleveland. They have beat Cleveland twice. But one of them was with the new version, one was with the old version. They can give Cleveland a good run for the money, but I just don't. I mean, like I said, we haven't seen LeBron lose in the first round, and if Cleveland's a likely matchup, then the Pacers will be out. But if they draw Philadelphia, if the Sixers somehow lose one of the final two games or both games, then we might have a different narrative here, and we could be seeing two young teams going at it. And I would hope for a 7 game series if that does go down.
All right. Next, we'll talk about the Greek Freak and the Milwaukee Bucks. They had a coaching change as Jason Kidd got fired midway through the season. They were on the outside of the playoffs, but they've stabilized themselves, got themselves back into comfortable spot here. It looks like they're going to be sixth. It looks like a possible matchup with the 76ers as things stand right now. So they got Bledsoe, Middleton has kind of improved. Their outside shooting, we talked about last year when they made their playoff run, how they had just that front court that was just, all long guys, and their defense was exceptional. But if you could make them, shoot the three, you could probably end up beating them. That's what Toronto did. This year, they've kind of changed their look a little bit, got some guys on the wing who are a little bit better at shooting. Do you think they've made enough improvements in the shooting department as far as 3-point shooting that Milwaukee can make it through more than just one round of the playoffs this year?
Well, it does look like the Bucks are better at 3-point shooting. They acquired Eric Bledsoe. Um, Give Joe Prunty a lot of credit. He's the guy that took over for Jason Kidd on an interim basis when Kidd got fired, and he has ended up becoming a real good addition for this team. And now we want to say when the Bucks now. At first, it was a locker room divided. I mean, Jason Kidd, there's a lot of chemistry issues, but everything has seemed to stabilize. And now, what Milwaukee will need to do is try to be the team to outshoot Philadelphia. If they draw Philadelphia, they need to outshoot Philadelphia. They need to make those shots. They need to be athletic. I think Simmons and Antetokounmpo will be one heck of a matchup if these two draw. That's another 7 game series I would like to see. And that's one of those kind of like similar to play forever. Like you hear if the wrestling pay per views fight forever. Like I would love to see these two go the full distance. Now with the weaknesses, they still don't have that interior presence. I mean, they can spread them out, but there's not as much interior presence as there should be. But it's something that will, it's something that may affect them in the rebounding game. And looks like the Bradley Center gets a little bit of life for a few more days before they close it out. So um, Milwaukee, I see a first round exit out of them, um, depending on who they draw between Cleveland and Philadelphia. Either way, I think if they draw Philadelphia, we may get a prolonged exit, but an exit nonetheless.
All right. Now we'll switch over to the Miami Heat. They got Dwayne Wade when Cleveland made their fire sale. So Dwayne Wade came back to 305 to, pair back up with Dragic. Whiteside, he's been, disgruntled this season, but, he's still out there trying to make it work best he can. Wayne Ellington, one of the best three-point shooters in the league, comes off the bench for them. Justice Winslow has kind of, developed into a good small forward, dependable. We always knew his defense would be, his calling card, but now he's starting to put his offensive game together. So talk about, what's going on down there in Miami. Eric Spoelstra, one of the best coaches that never gets any love. Again, the Heat started out dismal, and somehow, some way, they find themselves back in the playoffs again.
Yeah, they did, and yeah, they took advantage of a very disappointing Hornets team and a very underachieving Washington Wizards squad, and and of course being encouraged by the homecoming of Dwayne Wade and the resuming of Wade County, and so Miami was able to get into the playoffs like that. I mean, this Southeast Division was pretty awful this year. I mean, we look at the Hawks and Magic, who are non-factors this season. The Hornets, probably the biggest disappointment of the season. And like I said, Washington underachieved a lot, and so now Miami, it's going to be really difficult to see the Southeast Division champion as a seventh seed or a sixth seed, depending on where they land. But um, I think they could possibly have the chance to upend the Boston Celtics because the Celtics don't have Kyrie Irving, or they take it pretty far in the deep into the first round. But or if they play Toronto, they have a chance to knock off the Raptors. So this isn't your typical seventh seed or possible eight seed that will just roll over and get swept. This is a team that could make some noise at least into the second round.
All right. And the final team in the Eastern Conference appears to be the Washington Wizards, as they will make up the last team in the Eastern Conference playoffs this year. Like we said earlier, John Wall's coming back from injury. This team has had a lot of, infighting chemistry issues, playing out in the press. Scott Brooks has not really been known for his coaching acumen as far as the X and O's, as far as putting together an offensive juggernaut. So, with that being said, can the Wizards still overcome that? And if they become the eighth seed, overcome Toronto Raptors as well?
Well, they got two games in hand, so they can still get the seventh seed, and we could see Moore's twin series between the Celtics and Wizards, which I wouldn't mind seeing as a Jayhawk fan. So, be good to see the Twins go at it. Um, but if we do see 1-8 between the Wizards and Raptors, this is a team that if they can get over themselves and actually not underachieve, this is a team that could make some noise in the first round, and they have familiarity with Toronto, as we alluded to earlier, and it can be done. It's possible that the Wizards could upset the Raptors, and it's also possible that the Wizards could take out the Celtics. So they do have a good chance for an upset special, but they're gonna have to get over themselves and play good basketball in order to do it.
Yeah, the Wizards are going to have to get a lot from their 3-point shooting, namely Otto Porter, and their energy guys off the bench. They're definitely deficient when it comes to their inside play. They don't really get much from Gortat. He's just a body. Sometimes he has a good rebounding game, but he's not really that big of a scorer. He's not that big of a shot blocker on defense anymore. He's gotten a lot older. So they really have a disadvantage against teams who play through the middle or like to drive into the paint. So they're going to try to have to offset that with some really good 3-point shooting. So that means that Beal and Otto Porter are going to have to really show up throughout these playoffs to kind of, feed off a wall, being able to penetrate and get them open looks and knock them down for them to really do any damage. I think just because they're so deficient in the middle, defense and offensive wise. So those are my thoughts on the Wizards. So it's going to be tough for them to get past. I think because they have familiarity with the Raptors, that's a good matchup for them. But I don't think that they could beat Boston even with the depleted Celtics team. I think Boston would still be able to team basketball them. Because I think in the end the Wizards are going to resort back to playing individual ball when it gets tight. So we just want to let everybody know that Know the Score is being brought to you by Amazon. Please visit cspn.us, then click on the menu tab, scroll down to where it says keep the podcast free. Then click on Amazon. Do your shopping as you normally would, and some of your purchase comes back to CSPN to keep Know the Score free each and every week. So please, cspn.us through Amazon and Amazon.com, do it today. So we're going to move over to the Western Conference playoffs, where we're going to actually start with the team that's on the outside looking in, the Denver Nuggets. They're currently the 9th team, and at any win or loss, they could be in the playoffs as high as maybe the 6th seed. In any loss, they could be, out of the playoffs. They got one more head-to-head game with the Timberwolves. That's basically like the, winner you're in game, and then the shuffling can start from there with the rest of the seeding. So let's talk about Denver. They got this one game for it all against Minnesota. Do you think that Denver can overcome Minnesota and return to the playoffs?
Absolutely. I mean, you have one of the best centers in the game in Jokic. I mean, this guy has 9 triple doubles on the season. He can shoot the three. He can rebound. He can score in the paint. He can distribute the ball. And yes, I mean, give a shout out to the Northwest Division, though. Every team will at least be 10 games above 500 for the season. And so yeah, they have a lot to they have a lot to play for. They've won 6 in a row, and they have played they played very well. Um, Yusuf Nurkic as well, Will Barton, Devin Harris. These guys are, and Jamal Murray. I forgot about Jamal Murray. These are all guys to watch out for. These are definitely guys that not only can play very well, they also have the Rockets number too. So um, and so this is a team that can match up with the Rockets. I know a few Rockets fans that are actually fearful of the Nuggets because they can match up with them very well. And so yes, Denver does have what it takes to get into the postseason. It's just going to be a matter of actually doing it. And keep in mind, Denver did beat Minnesota 100-96 in Denver just on the 5th of April, so last Thursday. So 6 days later, these two play again. It's time in Minneapolis for the winner take all. And rolling 6 straight wins, they try to make it seven. It's possible they could do it.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna go in reverse order in the West because it's so jumbled up near the bottom. So the Minnesota Timberwolves currently are holding down this A seed. They've overcome the injury to Jimmy Butler. They've reacquired Derrick Rose. Carl Anthony Towns continues to, improve and just get better each and every year. So talk about Minnesota. They, took a big chance of getting Butler to go with the young guys, made a trade, in the offseason and, uh, improved their team greatly. So the Wolves currently are the eighth seed. What do you think about their prospects for their playoff run?
Well, they have a chance to also match up well with the Rockets too if Jimmy Butler can come back healthy. Um, Carl Anthony Towns is a monster. Andrew Wiggins is a good complementary player to him, and these guys are still in the eighth spot. So they have the advantage because they're in the eighth spot right now. They have the game at home in hand. They can do it if they do go in. Of course, I think they will be ecstatic because they will end the longest NBA playoff drought, which they haven't made to the NBA playoffs since 2004. So it's been a very long time, almost 14 years since their last playoff appearance. We've already seen the NFL's longest playoff drought, and with the Bills, we could see that again with the Timberwolves in the NBA. And do I think that they can do it? Absolutely. I think they give the Rockets a competitive run, but I think the Rockets prevail in the first round. And I just think that they just need to have everything go right for them against a red hot Nuggets team. And they haven't, the Timberwolves haven't been as consistent as the Nuggets. So that's where that's going to have to be a change of action for this team.
All right. Next up, the Oklahoma City Thunder, currently in the seventh spot. They've acquired their big three in the offseason. They got Paul George, they got Carmelo Anthony. Russell Westbrook is maybe on the verge of going back to back seasons with a triple double. But the season overall was disappointing as they're coming in the seventh slot. So, talk about, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Are they a team that was built more for the playoffs than the regular season? And this is the time that they really show how deadly they are.
I think they were built for the playoffs and not for the regular season. I mean, Carmelo Anthony is ecstatic about being in the playoffs. He said he doesn't have to worry about planning a vacation early. So I think this is where we could probably see the hoodie version of Melo in the playoffs, playoff Melo. And Paul George, as long as Paul George isn't thinking about Los Angeles, because I think that's what he wants to go in free agency, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Um, but I think a deep playoff run may change all that for both of those guys with Russell Westbrook. This team is not only was built for the playoffs, they have the chance to get under the skin of the Golden State Warriors. I would love for Oklahoma City to stay in the seventh seed so they can have that matchup with the Warriors. They've had the Warriors number this season. They've had the Rockets number this season. They've had the Trailblazers number this season. So those top three teams in the West, Oklahoma City has beat them, and they beat the. They've had the. I think they've had the best record against them. I forgot what the numbers actually are, but they can beat those top teams in the West are capable of doing it. We even just saw it just tonight when they beat the Rockets to get into the playoffs. So Oklahoma City, they're built for the playoffs. They may get higher, they may get lower. We'll just have to see where they go in this first round as well.
All right. Next up, the San Antonio Spurs. Spurs are definitely in an opposition for them. They would currently be in the sixth position, as we're used to them being, one of the top four teams, or most of the time top three seeds in the Western Conference. But this has been a strange year in all accounts for San Antonio, with the Kawhi Leonard injury. LaMarcus Aldridge. Is he in? Is he out? Are they going to trade him? Or are they going to stick and stay? Tony Parker. Kind of handing over the reins, being more, come off the bench, with Manu Ginobili now. So, the Spurs are kind of in transition, playing a lot more young guys than we've seen in the past. What can Pop stir up off the bench, man, in this playoff season to maybe upset? It looks like they're going to be playing Portland as of right now. But as they say in wrestling, card is subject to change.
Right, exactly. Card definitely subject to change, and let's just say if they do end up playing Portland, they would need a defensive stopper to work on Damian Lillard and or CJ McCollum. LaMarcus Aldridge has been engaged as of late, so if they could keep LaMarcus Aldridge engaged and he shows that he is in with this team, then the Spurs will be just fine. If LaMarcus Aldridge is checking out and he looking like he does not want to be on the court with these guys, then the Spurs are pretty much doomed. The I don't see them getting past the first round though. It's just a lot that they had to overcome anyway. I mean, if anybody could do it, it is the San Antonio Spurs, but for me, I just can't see it happening. Dave Lillard is playing very well, and also, well, it's card subject to change, but we'll just have to see how if Tony Parker can turn back the clock for a few games, as well as Manu Ginobili, who's been more capable of doing that than Tony Parker. But it's one of those things we'll just have to wait and see.
All right. At the number 5 seed currently, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. It looks like at the brow, Anthony Davis is going to make his first foray into the playoffs this year. He has really excelled ever since Boogie Cousins went down, unfortunately, with that Achilles tear. He's, basically put the team on his back. Him and Rondo have had some really good chemistry together. Rondo, being the, ultimate point guard. Holiday coming back and being able to play a full season has definitely improved them as well. So just talk about the Pelicans. Like I said last week, this will be the first time the country will probably really get a chance to really see Anthony Davis, for more than just a, one-off. They'll get, a few nights in a row of watching them play. So just talk about the Pelicans making it to the playoffs for the first time and your expectations for them.
I expect good things from the Pelicans. Heck, they actually play the Spurs tomorrow night for the higher seeding. So, I mean, both teams are locked at 47 and 34. So, the winner will likely get a higher seed, the loser gets a lower seed. And so, I like the fact that Anthony Davis has put the team on his back since DeMarcus Cousins went down. I think they were probably one of those wild card teams in the West. And I think they get to the second round and maybe even the Western Conference Finals if depending on the matchups, who else is playing. So this is a team that wasn't expected to do much of anything. Um, but they have really, especially after Cousins went down, but they've really rallied together. Like you said, Rondo and Anthony Davis have a great chemistry. They developed it, and the country's going to see how good this team really is, and what they can do moving forward.
All right. Next up, the Utah Jazz. Another one of those teams in the Midwest Division, the Wayne that you were talking about, finished 10 games or more over 500. They lost Gordon Hayward in the offseason, but they still ended up in the same spot that they did last year, winners of the Midwest Division. So, Rudy Gobert, they've got the, dynamic rookie Donovan Mitchell out there. They play really good team basketball. I love Quinn Snyder's offense. It's, move, motion, everybody share the ball, touch the ball type of offense. So talk about Utah, nobody pays attention to them because they're way out there in that mountain time zone. And as Belmonte said, if you want to do something and not have anybody see it, just do it in the Western time zone, mountain time zone. And that's basically explains the Utah Jazz.
Pretty much, Bo's right about that, and the Utah Jazz have done a lot of great things. They are a fun team to watch. Rudy Gobert, I think he finally got over the hurt of losing Gordon Hayward, and he's finally focused on being healthy and playing basketball. And so this team's in the playoffs. This team has been doing very well, um, and I think with the coaching of Quinn Snyder, another guy like there's many guys who could be head coach, coach of the year candidates this season. I mean, Brad Stevens, Brett Brown, Nate McMillan in the East. I mean, you can even give Eric Spoelstra. I mean, Miami was going nowhere, and he got him in the playoffs. And then out west, you got Thibodeau with the turnaround in Minnesota. You got Michael Malone with his turnaround in Denver. You have Quinn Snyder in Utah. So, and even Terry Stotts in Portland. So, and of course, you can't forget about Steve Kerr and Mike D'Antoni. So there's a lot of guys, and Dwayne Casey in Toronto. Can't forget about the job he's done in Toronto in the East. So many, many guys worthy of Coach of the Year. You can even throw LeBron in there in Cleveland. I mean, he even said I'm the extension of the coach, so Coach LeBron too. Um, Many candidates for that award, and it does boil down to great coaching. The last couple seasons, Quinn Snyder has been um, very, very good at his job and getting the Jazz into the playoffs. And now they want to go further. They need to go further, maybe a second round, depending on who they play, and just have to see where. Again, it just boils down to the matchups, seeing where they go and who they play from there.
All right. Now, the hottest team in the Western Conference, the Portland Trailblazers. We talked about them last week as, they had gotten themselves, looks like, firmly here in the third seed. We're talking about the combination of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. They're very formidable. They've had some good playoff showings, but they haven't been able to get past the first round. So what's going to be different this year? They've got a little bit more inside presence, scoring wise, than they've had in the past. They've been kind of just getting by with big men, but now they actually got a star as a big man to go along with these two guards. Is this year going to be different for Portland?
Yeah, this year can be different for Portland, but Portland is going to have to turn it around and turn it around pretty quickly because they have lost the last four games, including the loss of the Mavericks, and they have a Northwest Division championship date with the Utah Jazz because the Jazz haven't won it just yet. The Jazz are a half game out for that Northwest title, and the Trailblazers are a half game ahead. So Utah could even be the third seed in the Western Conference. That's how jumbled up and how fuzzy this playoff picture is. And it's really literally coming down to the last season as we record this. So Portland has cooled off a bit. They were one of the hottest teams in the West in the NBA. They've cooled off a little bit, but if they can get back on track, they can do great things when they're on. Their 3-point shooting is always good. They're not only you got Lillard and McCollum, Myers Leonard on the inside, and a few other players as well. So, but it's going to be interesting to see how they respond, if especially if they lose. I mean, if they lose that division lead and the division title, how will that mess with their psyche going into the postseason, especially losing five in a row?
All right. Next up, the Golden State Warriors. Now, the Golden State Warriors are in a position that we really haven't seen them in coming to the playoffs since this run has began, as they're leaking oil bad. I think they've lost like 3 or 4 in a row. They got blown out, and I forgot who they got blown out by like 20 something. And Steve Kerr was just like, "This is not acceptable." The
The
Pelicans came,
Pacers.
yeah, the Pacers. That's right. The Pelicans came in and took one from them on their home court as well over the weekend. So they're really limping heading into the playoffs right now. They won't have Steph for the first round for sure. And maybe not the second round, depending on how the evaluation goes. I think he's got another. I think he's going to get evaluated during the week of the first round of playoffs. So after Sunday, sometime he's going to get reevaluated here again. So Golden State, they're very vulnerable, or so it seems this year. And could they be on the wrong side of an upset, especially if Oklahoma City is the team that locks down that 7th seed?
Yeah, Golden State. This is the most vulnerable of their playoff run during this Splash Brothers era, Steve Kerr era. And even Steve Kerr said this is the deepest playoff field he's seen in a long time. So even he's aware of the fact that, nothing's a guarantee. They're not a shoe in to win the West like they have been the last 3 years. And and this is so one of those things where, are the Warriors tired, or are they just because making these deep playoff runs, and you got 2 championships out of it, you won a third one, but it's always harder to go through because you keep having that same, what's the word, the same success. But now you got a lot of guys hurt or on the mend from their injuries. So there's going to be rust there, injury rust. Um, and Steph Curry will be evaluated for a little bit. Um, so if they do get Oklahoma City, watch out. This could be an upset special. I mean, just think about the storylines there, and going how loud that Oklahoma City crowd will be, especially with Kevin Durant coming back. That's not going to be pretty. So uh, Golden State, they are in a vulnerable state. They have the tools to get to the finals and defend their crown. Just going to see how that goes, and where they end up, or well, they end up at 2, but who they play in that first round is going to be a very telling sign.
For sure, the Golden State definitely is one of these teams that's going to be definitely paying attention to the bottom of the Western Conference, and hope they can get a favorable matchup. I think they would want San Antonio to kind of fall back to them because they've had pretty good success against San Antonio this year, not that same success against Oklahoma City. So
Yeah,
if they got to go into a playoff series down a gun, I think they would rather have to face the Spurs than have to face Oklahoma City.
right.
So that brings us to the number one team in the Western Conference, the number one team in all of the NBA, the Houston Rockets. They've set sail from the very beginning of the season. They've had, some multiple long winning streaks throughout the season. They've been playing very entertaining basketball, great chemistry. Chris Paul, seemed lost the first, handful of games, but he's figured out, how this thing works. Harden, hadn't dropped off. More than likely going to be the MVP this year. So just talk about Houston Rockets. Finals or bust, man?
It is finals or bust kind of year in Houston. I think that's what the fans are expecting. They want NBA Finals. They are expecting it. I mean, but let's also look at their coach's history in the NBA playoffs. Mike D'Antoni has not had great success. I remember those teams in Phoenix where he had the best record, but when it comes down to it, they lost when it mattered most. But I think the biggest difference between this Rockets team that he has and teams of the past that he's had is that they play more defense than any other D'Antoni coach team that I've seen, and they have what it takes to win it all. I mean, they're 64-16. They are playing great basketball, and and uh, and this is something. I mean, they won 20 straight at home, and they will have. Well, they won 20 straight at home before Oklahoma City stopped that last Saturday. But to have home court, you had to find a way to steal one in Houston, and that's not an easy thing to do whatsoever. So I think the mood in Houston is finals or bust. I mean, the city's already got one championship, and they're looking for another one, just like Philadelphia is. The Astros won the World Series, and they're looking for hope that the Rockets can follow suit and bring that NBA championship back to Clutch City.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I think the key to the Rockets this year is going to be Clint Capella. If he can stay out of foul trouble and do the Clint Capella things that he does defensively, I think that's a big reason why it looks like Houston is the best D'Antoni defensive team that he's ever had. Is he's never had really a center or player in the middle that's this good defensively. I mean, Amari Stoudemire was undersized and he could block shots here or there, but I mean, Capella can neutralize, most of your big, power forwards or scoring centers, and that's a big difference that D'Antonio never really had going on in Phoenix or with the, Knicks when he was there too. So, and he was in the
Right.
playoffs. So I think that Capella is going to be kind of the key. You kind of know what you're going to get from Chris Paul. You know what you're going to get from Harden. But if Capella can stay out of foul trouble and impact the games like he has at certain times this year, I know he had like a 20 and 20 double this season. So if he can, just stay on the floor and be there for the defense and rebound on the defensive boards, I think Houston's going to make a long run in these playoffs, and they may be the representative for the Western Conference in the finals, especially if Golden State doesn't get healthy or they're at 80% of their team's strength, which is probably going to be more than likely with all the guys that got hurt at one time. I think this is the best chance for Harden to finally get back to the playoff to the finals, excuse me, and try to redeem himself from his effort when he played with Oklahoma City all those years ago. So anything else you'd like to add, Dwayne, before we wrap up the NBA playoff talk?
The playoffs will start on Saturday, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun couple of months getting down to the NBA Finals and crowning a possible new champion.
Yes, the 40 days and 40 nights is one of the best campaigns in sports. It kind of stinks when you get to the conference finals because you're so used to the 2 games a night, 3 games on the weekends, and then it just starts slowing down. But these first 2 rounds are a lot of fun if you're an NBA fan.
Right. Agreed.
All right, Dwayne. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to you, man, so you can give your shout outs and final thoughts for this week.
All right. Well, shout outs to uh, you, CSPN, Um, Classic Mel, Jesse Nabias. Shout out to the Wrestlecast. A great time this weekend, WrestleMania weekend, as always. And my final thought is the other playoffs that we didn't get a chance to touch on, but the Stanley Cup playoffs, they start tomorrow night, April 11th. You have three games on the networks of NBC, and it starts off with the Flyers and the Penguins, as well as you have the. Give me just a moment here. Trying to get to it. You got the Flyers and the Penguins, the Minnesota Wild taking on the Winnipeg Jets, and then you have finally the Los Angeles Kings taking on the expansion Vegas Golden Knights in their first season. The Golden Knights won the Pacific Division, got the second seed in the NHL playoffs, and they'll be hosting their first ever playoff game Wednesday night. And then you got five games on Thursday, including the President's Trophy winning Nashville Predators. They play 8:30. The New Jersey Devils take on Tampa Bay Lightning. The Boston Bruins host the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Washington Capitals face the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the San Jose Sharks take on the Anaheim Ducks. These crowds are electric every single year. The playoff intensity is always turned up, and it's always fun to watch. I strongly encourage our listeners to, get on board, find somebody who follows hockey and enjoy it, and you will not be disappointed. I guarantee you.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like playoff hockey. 9 years ago, the Carolina Hurricanes gave me my first ever NHL playoff experience, and they haven't been able to duplicate it. So, still waiting for my second run at it. But yeah, the playoffs in hockey are insane. Those people come ready to cheer from the time those doors open, an hour, sometimes an hour and a half before those games. They sauced up and they're ready to be loud.
Indeed, and also probably the loudest arena is probably Nashville. Go to a National Predators game or just watch a National Predators game. The crowd at Bridgestone Arena is always loud. Doing the games over the past couple seasons, including this season, as they made the Stanley Cup playoff run, it was insane. So, looking forward to it again.
All right. My shout outs will be to my co host, Dwayne, and our other co host, Jesse and the Bias. Also, give a shout out to the chairman of the CSPN, Mr. Jamal. Give a shout out to all the podcasters and the podcasts here on the network. Thank you guys for all the hard work you put in. And Dwayne, it's very interesting that you shouted out the WrestleCast because my final thought is going to be about its cousin in the UFC, and Conor McGregor and his antics on Friday. Conor got stripped of his titles, and of course, he did not take that very well. One of his guys was going to be in one of the big fights in this past UFC in New York. So Conor basically crashed the set, caused havoc, got arrested for throwing a trash can into a shuttle bus and breaking the glass and injuring one of the fighters who was going to compete that weekend. He got like pieces of glass in his eye and cut and things like that. So, basically they, in the wrestling business, they would call that shot an angle, which means to get people talking. And it definitely on Friday was the biggest news as Conor did get arrested. There was a warrant out for his arrest. Dana White came out, said his plane was grounded. He wasn't going to be able to leave New York. And so, he did post bail and everything. So we'll see what happens next. But, it was a lot of pro wrestling involved in this. And UFC does pro wrestling at this point as far as getting people talking about what's going on and how they get people talking about what's going on. A lot better than pro wrestling does these days. So, I can't wait to see what the angle is for Connor. Is this kind of like the first, little foyer into maybe a rematch with Mayweather, or is he going to move up to a different weight class or move into Bellator or different, version of UFC, Ultimate Fighting, not UFC, but MMA, excuse me. So, yeah, can't wait to see what Connor's next move is after this little stunt. So,
All right.
You got anything to add?
Yeah, the whole Connor thing, that was quite insane. I guess he was really fed up. And I also saw that Floyd Mayweather said if he ever does return to the ring, it would be in UFC, which would be very interesting. Maybe there's a return bout with Connor. I don't know.
That's just Floyd out there trying to get his Twitter numbers up, man.
Probably. And also, just to go back, I would say probably if you're a casual hockey fan, probably if you want to watch probably the three series I would recommend to watch. And ESPN, I got it from ESPN too. Watch Boston versus Toronto. Watch Vegas and Los Angeles, and watch Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Those would probably be the three series to check out because of the intensity, especially Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Those are two cities in the same state, and the fans of those teams absolutely loathe each other. So definitely check that out.
All right. And so, on that note, for my co host, the Libra icon, Dwayne, I'm Don De Laurenti, and now you know the score.